The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Welcome to it. Great to be with you on a Thursday. It's Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, and you. We'll dive in, get our starting five shout-outs. In the stream, always watch the show and catch us on the Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Hear us in different spots across the state, the Hail Varsity Radio Network. Can also watch the show on Twitter at HVarsity Radio. Give the show a follow. And find Elijah on Twitter at Herbalessence, at Schmidt_radio for me. And we'll talk with Brandon Vogel from Counter Read, some recruiting thoughts, and his earlier column in the week on the Nebraska offensive line. We've kind of dabbled with the line a little bit yesterday. We'll get Vogues' thoughts here in about 15 minutes. In hour two, we'll kick things off with Gary Barnett. Little golf, but mostly football with Barty. And the topic yesterday was confidence. How do you breathe that into your team? And we'll talk that topic with Gary Barnett. Also the Hall of Fame topic with Coach Barty and Mike Leach, and where he sits at the winning percentage. Daddy Burke, Pride of Chicago, Burke's Beat, Burke's Best Bets. Daddy will talk some MLB and some NBA with us. I think we split last night with the steak and the beer. Boston handled it for me on one end, but Atlanta did not. It's too bad Povich didn't get the win, but pitched well last night. That was quite a scene. Pretty awesome to have Will Bolt front and center on the Orioles TV broadcast with all sorts of Husker love going. Bummer came in as well, so 3 Huskers. And I know the tweet from Mahomes on Matty Waldron was pretty cool, too. So it's been a good social media run for Nebraska baseball on the eve of the College World Series. You are invited out. Come see us tomorrow. Zipline is where we'll be 4 to 6 tomorrow. Posted up there above the tap room. Got a special guest going to join us. We've been to a lot of College World Series games in our life, Elijah and me. We're going to invoke a guy who's won a game at the College World Series and climbed that hill. Jabba Chamberlain going to be on site with us tomorrow. So excited to have Jabba join us for some CWS thoughts. But that's a Friday thing. Thursday in dead center in front of us. Recruiting. We will get there. Big visit weekend. We've got the names, the prospects, where's Nebraska at in this race with some of these other programs trying to get the same talent in their 2025 class. 489-1240, number to get in, 800-825-5865. If you want to dial up, Chris at HailVarsity.com. In the StreamYard, the other Dave is in first. Justin, good to have you. Justin second. Jeff Snitley, part of the Boulder Peace Treaty, in third. Patrick, good to have you here at 4. Sal checks it at 5. KG right there with him. The real Matthew is also in. Jimmy, good to have you in. Jimmy, Crazy Spider Adventures, also in. Ryan is ready to roll. And Vince, good to have you. And some more. KG, we said what's up to you. Tiger Shark Diver is in, is giving you a little guff already. Tiger Shark. Elijah, what's up? You running late? We're good. How are you? You juiced up, ready to go?
I've been amped. College World Series starts tomorrow. I got some friends in town. They're in to see the College World Series. Haven't seen them in a couple years, so excited to see them.
Are you still hesitant on what you're spending to go see Saturday?
Absolutely. Luckily,
lay it out.
Luckily, we have our good friend Crew from the stream who has generously invited me up to his tailgate spot for the College World Series. So we have that. The thing about the College World Series is ever since they did away with the GA seating in the outfield, they've been jacking up ticket prices, especially on those weekend games. When can I go up? Well, on the weekend. I guess I could go to the evening games whenever we're up there.
You got to go see Kentucky, though, don't you?
Well, that's who's playing in that first game on Saturday, so I look at that and, like, I'm going to be up there. I can call it work.
It's history.
Which is nice. At the same time, like...
yeah, beer drinking and tailgating. Hell yeah, you can call it work.
Social media content.
Yes.
That's all that is. That's all that is. So I'm, like, looking at that, but then you look... $45, $50 to go sit in the outfield?
But, dude, you're going to save, presumably, on booze and food at the tailgate. So you can take that pot of money that was going to be for concessions and just apply it to your outfield seat.
You know what I could do with that money that I could then spend on outfield seats? I could go spend it at a local establishment while watching the game on TV and air conditioning.
Or you could just get up to Ameristar and put some money down.
That's also an idea.
That's a great idea.
I can win you a TV this weekend.
Babbers, God love him. Babbers offered me one of his TVs. He texted during the show yesterday. It's like, hey, I got a TV for if you want it. And I'm like, brother, you're so awesome. No, thank you. But no, I'll be all right. Kid's going to get home from work at Lazari's, try and turn his TV on in his room, and there'll be no TV there.
Well, I still think that take that $200 and get a TV for Junior so you can reclaim your television back. I think that makes the most sense.
I'm going to get him a 13-inch black and white Zenith. We'll mount that thing. It's going to get 3 channels.
The old tube TV.
He ain't going to be happy. We did have like when we moved into our house, me and my roommates from college, old buddy Sitz gave us a console TV, and we're getting in there. And my big old roommate Brian from California, 6'6", and he's ripping his bed apart, like, to try and get it through, and he's like, bed's busted. And Sitz is like, must have been a hell of a woman. And that was hilarious. As we're hauling in this console Zenith that I ended up, instead of putting in the living room, this is pre-flat screens and HDs, it was supposed to go in the living room, but I put it in my room. Since I had to collect all the rent.
I was not expecting that story to go in that direction.
No, but it was just a good icebreaker. Yeah. It was a great line.
She was too.
Yeah. So he'll claim it. It's false. Absolutely false. But plenty to get into today. Scott is in as well. And Scott makes a great point, Elijah, when it comes to what you're spending for the College World Series. Scott's like, imagine that price for a college football playoff game. $50 is peanuts. So it is a championship setting and series. I think the seats at CHI, I think for both sessions might have been $160 when I went up for the NCAA tournament. Mm-hmm. Saw Iowa State, saw Illinois.
Well, and that's not even college football playoff. I mean, that was round of 16, correct?
No, it wasn't even Sweet 16.
Was it 32?
It's 32. But it was still
steep.
Well, we were a lower bowl. We were, I don't know.
Well, this brings up an interesting question that
a bad paper toss from the band. It was good.
Maybe we can ask this question to Danny Burke. Is it worth it to put down a flyer on Nebraska to make the college football playoff just to pay off the tickets?
Oh, so okay,
so 50 to win something, and then you can take that money should you win it.
A 50s future.
Exactly, and the money is more of an investment to save yourself some money on some college football playoff seats. Mm. Is that a worthy investment? We'll maybe get Danny Burke's thoughts on that in an hour too.
Yeah, I would like that. So, pretty good story as we dive in to the summer season, and time will tell with what Nebraska football is in 2024. We know the excitement's amped up. We know there's plenty of Roulade to drink. And above all, I think as a Nebraska fan, a lot of you feel confident that this could be a good breakthrough. We just don't know the extent of it. You look at where you're at as a football team defensively, on the offensive line, and you get into the quarterback spot and you feel good about what you have. Even though it's unproven, you feel good about where it can go. with the talent, the maturity, and really 3 options to go with. Well, ESPN, Bill Conley, put out a pretty good feature on college football's most influential teams. He's got a top 30, and some of these squads are eons ago. Texas in 68. They were the first team to run the wishbone. The rest of the college football world by the 1970s, not Nebraska, but was running the wishbone. Oklahoma, Ohio State, Michigan, everybody went to the wishbone because it was incredible. Bama went to the wishbone. They were running the wishbone. But some, air quote, more current teams that you may remember that make this list, 2010 TCU and Gary Patterson. And Isaiah is not your name, it's Elijah. Elijah's face, there's a recruit named Isaiah that's in my mind, forgive me.
Okay,
no, Elijah, listen, TCU and your crinkled face says, well, why are we talking about TCU 2013? Well, they were 2010. Excuse me. They were pretty elite defensively with that 4-2-5.
Yeah.
And what they did on defense was kind of copycatted by a lot of other schools. 2013 Auburn, how they had a magical run to the national championship post Cam Newton, where they had some incredible wow wins. Right? They were able to beat Alabama, the kick 6. Okay, remember that? And then also the tip drill Butte at the end of the game as they beat Georgia. 2 miracle wins to get there. They lost in the throes of a final drive by Mr. Crablegs himself, and they finished 12-1. Those are 2 of the teams mentioned. I want to bring it back, though.
Can I go from that same era? One of the teams I had in mind, I'm not sure if it made the list or not. I loved watching this team back in the day, 2011 Baylor. Did that team make the list?
RG3?
Because
no.
It was the RG3 Heisman year, and I think that really catapulted the true read option dual threat quarterback. It was around in college football. I feel like that's one of the teams I remember that truly catapulted it into national prominence of everybody then was following suit. We need a dual threat quarterback because of, who remembers that Oklahoma game? The game that essentially won RG3 the Heisman, where Oklahoma had no answer for him with his arm or his legs. That's one of the teams I think of that's like, sure, you can put TCU in there. It's a less than sexy pick, but if I'm going a less than sexy pick, I'm going a year later and I'm going with that Baylor team. That Baylor team was awesome to watch. Was it the best college football team I've ever seen? No.
But it was
fun. And I think
they were
it was
must see.
And I think it was influential for about the next 6-7 years in college football, where after that, everyone needed a dual threat quarterback.
Well, the first real dual threat quarterback on this list, the team that comes in number 20, right around or before your time was, and you've seen video of him, 1999 Virginia Tech.
Oh, with Mike Vick.
Mike Vick. That team absolutely memorable. And that's what I want to get some thoughts from you guys in the stream. I've got my list of teams that are memorable to me in some different sports and also some football teams. But that 11-1 Virginia Tech team where Vick was a top 10 everything. Heisman finisher, didn't win the Heisman. Peter Warrick won it that year. But Vick carried that squad to beat Miami, carried that squad to beat West Virginia, carried that squad to come back and take the lead against Florida State in the Sugar Bowl. What's unique about that is that same year, Nebraska, if they don't get lost against Texas, where they had a 2-score lead at halftime down in Austin, that was Nebraska's only loss that year. Nebraska finished number 2 in the country that year. And loaded squad, Vanden Bosch, loaded squad with Mike Brown, just really killer defense, fantastic offense with Crouch taking the reins at quarterback. You had Newcomb, Buchalter, Alexander. You still had Raiola at center. You had Russ Hochstein. You had Funodi. You had some dudes. You were really, really good. And you just didn't get a chance to play for the title because you slipped up against Texas. You got that revenge in the Big 12 championship game, but then it was unbeaten Florida State. It was unbeaten Virginia Tech. And you were left to go hammer Tennessee in the Fiesta Bowl. So I always wondered out loud, how would that game have gone for Nebraska against Mike Vick and Virginia Tech? How would that game have gone for Nebraska against Florida State? and I'm interested. Anonymous chimes in 1999, Nebraska had the talent, while Texas had the officials. Yeah, that we were down at that one. We went and spent with the whole weekend with cousin Dino and my cousin Justin, who went to Texas, and man, it was looking great. And then just a couple of bad fumbles on the goal line, no good. 07 Oregon makes an appearance. 74 Oklahoma makes an appearance with that defense. 2011 Alabama with Saban.
Got to have 2019 LSU on there.
They are. Yeah. They make the squad. But you have a lot of 1912s, 1947s, 1993 Fun and Gun Steve Spurrier in Florida, which was pretty big time. In at number 7 is LSU. But what are some of the it teams or the wow teams? It can be Nebraska or some of the other squads. Some games I have, or teams I have, don't like this team, but it was a Cinderella run for them. 96 Arizona State. We know what they did to Nebraska. Somehow they survived a couple of overtime games, and they were 3 minutes away from winning a national championship, but Ohio State beat them in the Rose Bowl. 93 Florida State is there for me. 83 Nebraska for sure. 88 Notre Dame. We'll get more into this with Vogues. Hail Varsity continues.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for spending time at Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager. We welcome in with Counter Reed, Brandon Vogel at Brandon L. Vogel. On Twitter, as he is doing awesome work, him and Aaron Sorensen with Counter Reed. We invite you to subscribe and check them out. Vogues, you're geared up. You look settled in. How are we doing?
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
We are good. Bill Conley, really talented writer with ESPN, has a countdown, I think, of the top 30 most influential college football teams. Some teams you recognize, LSU, more so the most recent team, 99 Virginia Tech, 2013 Auburn, and their miracle run with a couple of wow wins. Gary Patterson's unveiling of the 4-2-5 defense. Let's start there before we talk about offensive line and your feature on the Huskers and the Unknowables, that series you've been doing. But is there a hoops or a football team from your sports fandom years that has a special place in your heart? I've got a lot of them. I put down 96 Arizona State, didn't like them, but was there. That fateful 19-0 game as a freshman at Nebraska and saw what they did the rest of the year. That was a magic carpet ride. I think of the 88 Notre Dame team, Michael Stonebreaker, Zorich. I mean, they were Tony Rice at quarterback. They were a lot of fun to watch. And then, of course, Mike Vick, and that was the always what-if team for me. What if Nebraska's 99 team hooked up with that Virginia Tech team? Is there a team that is in your spot? Eat Beef talks about 2010 Michigan and Denard Robinson. That was a drunk game between Notre Dame. That was pretty cool. But any team that is maybe a favorite or got a sentimental spot for you?
Definitely a sentimental spot for me would be and I'm guessing this is 90, 93, 94, the first Fab Five team.
Okay.
Like in terms of what they meant for basketball, that one is up there, and it meant for basketball in a lot of ways. I think in terms of recruiting wise, like if you're talking about this from a coach level of like what recruiting looks like style wise in terms of black socks and long shorts and black shoes, that one, like that basketball team, that Fab Five basketball team is kind of the start of the 90s for me. In terms of football, I'm forgetting what year it would be, but that Northwestern team that kind of really opened up spread football, so would have been 2006, 2007, somewhere around there. They're pretty much up there. So like Denard Robinson, yes, but he would have been 2-3 years, I think, after Northwestern kind of opened things up. And when we look at football broadly, that the spread revolution is kind of tough to undersell at this point.
One of the things I said back in segment 1, Brandon, was 2011 Baylor with Robert Griffin III. He won the Heisman that year. Just how it felt like dual threat quarterbacks exploded across college football in the years that followed. I know he wasn't the first, probably wasn't the best, but something about that season I feel like really changed the following 5-6 years in college football, just as everyone felt like they needed a dual threat quarterback. Am I off base there, or is that a reasonable choice as being a team that stands out in my memory as being both entertaining and somewhat influential?
No, I think it's a reasonable choice for sure. He was the piece of this is that Baylor, and I think a lot of Nebraska fans, this is how I remember that era, were Baylor, it's fine. For a long time in the Big 12 era, Baylor was just the team that you kind of said, well, Nebraska can win that game.
The get well game.
Yep. Yeah, it really was.
The butt of all jokes.
For wherever Nebraska was, they put a tarp over their empty seats, et cetera, et cetera. Once Art Briles got there, that changed. And then once he got Robert Griffin, it really changed, because not only did you have this kind of scheme that could maybe differentiate you, but you had a quarterback who could also differentiate you. So if you want to peg kind of the spread revolution, for lack of a better term, to Robert Griffin, I totally get it.
Number 5 on this list is the 2008 Texas Tech team. Little old West Texas Tech, the Pirate, were number 2 in the country after they shocked Texas. There's 3 seconds left. Pirate says, F it, we're going to throw it down to Crabtree. Graham Harrell completes it on the sideline. Musburger's doing the game. And he's like, I don't know if they're going to have enough time. Crabtree breaks the tackle, dances into the end zone, and it's a party. It's a party in Lubbock with tortillas flying, the Mask of Zorro racing down the field.
That was the play that convinced me Michael Crabtree was going to be an NFL superstar. Was I right? Nah, but I thought so after that.
Tech ended up losing to OU in that kind of 3-way triangle of the Big 12. Nebraska took him to overtime. And I remember that game. I'm watching it at my parents' house, and I get a call. My wife and my mother are over with some friends. We're watching in my mom and dad's basement, and it's a strip joint offering me a weekend gig to do the DJ.
The MC?
MC.
Wow.
Cinnamon center stage. And it's like, Dad, who did you put up to prank me at halftime? They're losing. I had to turn it down. I got the look. Got the look from the wife.
I'm sure walking into a strip club and hearing Schmidt's voice, you just turn around and leave.
Great, overtime ball game for Nebraska, but Texas Tech. All right, that team was influential on many levels. Vogues, you talked about the unknowables, a series you've been doing. You've been profiling different units for this Nebraska football team. We may have to go a little OT with you if you're up for it. But you focused in on the offensive line, and a stat you drilled down on was havoc rate. Kind of lay out what Nebraska was a year ago and what they need to be this year.
Yeah. So Nebraska enters the season in a pretty good spot in terms of the amount that they return. And in terms of total snaps, the amount they return on the O-line, that's good. We all know they need to replace basically both guards, and you've got some options there. But I think the bigger question is how much better did they get in year 2 under Donovan Raiola versus year 1, which was under a different coaching staff. And I think you can clearly show that they got better in terms of run blocking. Havoc rate, the stat that you mentioned, like they gave up too many sacks. There were too many turnovers from the QB spot, which however you want to like portion that out to the O-line is kind of up to you. But that's the big piece of this. So they've got good experience returning. Can they limit sacks? Does that help limit fumbles and limit interceptions for the O-line? And I think that's kind of the big question for Nebraska going into 2024. And this piece kind of explores that.
It's Brandon Vogel with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Vogel, what's your biggest question with the offensive line as a whole? I know the guard spot's a little bit up in the air. I think you also have the Prohaska. What Prohaska do you see in 2024? Do you see that confident guy we saw at the end of the season? But for you, what's the biggest question mark, I guess, personnel-wise with that offensive line?
Yeah, I think broadly the question is are the tackles good enough? So we can look at right tackle. Bryce Benhart has started 41 games there over his career. Like he's been a fixture. Okay, good enough. You look at left tackle, and that was basically split halfway between Turner Corcoran and Teddy Prohaska. Are you good enough at that spot? Because I think that informs a lot of things. Like when you're talking about your primary tackle, if you got a right-handed quarterback, it's left tackle. If you don't, it's the other tackle. Are they like? It's hard. It's really hard to do. But like, do you have a tackle who's not just long enough there, but athletic enough there to be one of the best in the Big Ten, to end up on a first or second team all Big Ten roster at the end of the year? And it's been a while since Nebraska had that. I don't think I can pencil them in for that going into 2024. Though I think they have that potential. So that's the biggest thing. Like, I feel good about their ability to fill in at left guard and right guard. It's just how elite are you going to be at one of the tackle spots, which often, I think, determines how elite you're going to be as a football team as a whole. Like, it's a hugely, hugely important position.
Brandon Vogel with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. Vogue's recruiting here we'll get to in just a minute. Do you have a little bit of time here on the other side for us?
Yep.
All right, Brandon Vogel going to hang tight with us. Some more submissions when it comes to influential or memorable college football teams. KG talks about the Jayhawks 07 season as they were they were crazy bananas good. 12-1, Orange Bowl champs. Aqib Talib is the quarter that played a billion years in the NFL.
Broncos legend.
Among other teams, for sure.
Broncos legend. That's where he won a ring.
Pat White in West Virginia with Rich Rod. Man, they were close to getting to that natty. But I believe Pitt ruined the party for him. Wannstedt and a guy named Aaron Donald. Yeah. Then he went to Michigan.
Remember, I was sitting here thinking about Aqib Talib. We also mentioned Michael Crabtree. And that reminds me of whenever Aqib Talib snatched Michael Crabtree's chain in a game.
Yeah.
I've done it twice, actually.
And you know what that means? You don't wear earrings or chains on the football field. Could go very poorly. More with Brandon Vogel, counterread, counterread.com, a Thursday edition with Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Little overtime, Brandon Vogel, counterread, counterread.com, memorable football teams for you as a kid or in those teen years. 99 Virginia Tech, 83 Nebraska. Fab Five circled on my list here, Brandon Vogel, your team that kind of said, wow. Anthony checks in, says, bad as I hate to say it, 1998 Kansas State. This stems from Bill Conley's article. He runs down the most influential teams, the top 30 influential teams of all time. Of course, the 68 Texas squad invented the wishbone, Vogues. Everybody went to the wishbone, and the rest is history. It was an arms race for the wishbone, similar to that birth of the spread, and they highlight Gus Malzahn's 2013 Auburn squad. Remember when Gus was with Arkansas State, and they came to Lincoln, and Bo had about a 12 out of 10 pucker factor with the tempo going?
I remember it well because I kind of wrote about it going into that game of like, hey, this Gus Malzahn guy, he's kind of viewed as the next wave of football. And like, I don't remember how much Nebraska was favored by going into that game. Like it was a degree where you're like, yeah, Nebraska should win, but I was like, this is kind of serious. Like this is a real guy who like is trying to like mix things up and do that. So Nebraska had no issue with Arkansas State in that game. But I definitely remember previewing it and being like, oh, yeah, this is something to watch.
He was testy and tense. He's always intense, but it was always just like how are the dudes going to handle this? It's not that you're not going to out-talent him, but it's nothing you can really simulate or practice.
See, my problem with this conversation as a whole is it's kind of hard for me to include any team that beat Nebraska. Because then they're on my stink list,
Sure. Well, I've laid out a few. I mean, that 98 K-State team was incredible. Bishop, Nebraska played their asses off against them down there. And they're a Linda Blair reenactment flag call away from maybe putting a game-tying drive together. As Crouch got his head ripped 180. Travis Oakes did it. And Nebraska had no business with three quarterbacks, two of them freshmen, being in that game. Yet they were. They came out on fire. It was nuts. They were just pounding K-State. And then Bishop. Vogues, you remember it well. The old broken quarterback play, the Braxton Miller before Braxton Miller, where the quarterback goes nuts on you. And K-State ended up winning. I think we were throwing a party at my house, and we were watching that game. We were all in college, and liquor cabinet got emptied. There was drinks spilled all over mom and dad's carpet. I don't know. It was a sanctioned party. I was in college.
You wouldn't have been able to survive my time at UNL. I tell you what, that was every week. Oh, a disappointing loss again. Oh, they blew it in the fourth quarter again.
You come back and what the hell? They're only going to the Orange Bowl this year. Son of a.
Sounds nice.
Right? Yeah, no kidding, right? Vogues, on that front, let's talk recruiting. Pretty crucial visit weekend for Nebraska. They have done June right. They've moved up some visitors, but kind of the headliner, Christian Jones out of West Side. The last laugh could be Oklahoma next weekend unless Nebraska makes him they've already kind of laid it out. But they do not want to lose in-state. They don't want to lose in-state of that caliber.
No, they've done a pretty good job so far, I think, not losing in-state. So, eventually they will to someone, and fair enough. Like you're dealing with high school kids, and it's been a long time from the time when Chris Schmidt would lose his mind over losing to K-State to the point where Elijah would just be like, yeah, we just lost all the time. So, that's a pretty big gap. So I think the amount that Nebraska has won in state of late is notable for that reason. Like it's just a different era too. Mm-hmm. Like, back then it would be like, oh, if you're an in-state kid, like you're probably getting under-recruited to, like, if you're good enough to get a Nebraska offer, and then if Nebraska comes in, it was just like, well, that's it and that's done. Like, why wouldn't I go there? And that's not college football today. That's not Nebraska today. But it's also like you're just so much more aware of everything else that is out there. So we'll see. Like, I thought Nebraska has had a good start to June. Like, we all know that it's important. Like, the camps are concentrated here, and also the coaching staff has constructed things to a point where they're like, we want to make a lot of hay in June. So far, I think they have, and we'll see how that continues to go as we get a little deeper in the month.
Brendan, what do you consider in terms of importance? Obviously, the first 2 recruiting classes that Roll puts together, extremely important as the foundation of your program. Well, what's year 3 in your mind as you enter this 2025 cycle, trying to put it together? What does year 3, that third recruiting class in a cycle, mean to you?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a gray area for me, and maybe this is a little bit of old-fashioned thinking, but if you just kind of look at it broadly of like, okay, like year 1, you know, you're getting people who are true believers in the boat of like, here's where we're going, that's what we're selling, that's what we can do. Year 2, you've got people who you have some results on the field. Nebraska went 5-7, maybe not ideal in terms of that, but they're still gaining some traction. I think year 2 is the pivotal class. Year 3 is kind of the one that's in this gray area where it's like, yeah, we're telling you the same things we told the guys in the last class. Maybe we'll actually produce some results that show you that in season 2, I guess, to clarify a little bit. So we'll see where that ends up, because it's you know, if Nebraska goes nuts and has a much better than expected season in 2024, maybe they're in on guys all of a sudden in December that they wouldn't be in on now. But like, you can't build a recruiting plan around that. So you just kind of gotta keep chopping wood with the guys that you think you can get.
Vogue's about 20 seconds. Tell us about Counter Read. How can they get signed up?
Yep, head to counterread.com. It's a twice weekly newsletter, two exclusive subscriber newsletters a week. We do a couple of other things. You mentioned it a little bit earlier, wrote about the O-line earlier. Aaron recapped some of the things we're hearing on recruiting. So that's the sort of stuff you can expect. So head on over there.
Vogues, we'll talk Saturday. Thank you much.
Thank you.
Hail Varsity Radio is live. Now, back to Schmitty.
Schmitty's a great guy, but he don't have a brain.
And Elijah.
You want me to speak? When I point you, yeah.
On Hail Varsity Radio.
10 minutes away, it's Gary Barnett time, and then we'll check in with Daddy Burke, Burke's Best Bets, burksbeat.com. What happens in Game 4? What are we thinking here for the College World Series? And some MLB with Daddy Burke in hour 2, 489-1240. Great input here. Scott talks about the UCF undefeated season. It was influential for Nebraska as it caused more PTSD for Nebraska fans than he thought was ever possible. That Central Florida team was awesome. And what a great story, from 6-7 to unbeaten. So that was cool. And the other Brian checks in. Rule & Co. has done about as much as they can up to now. What's left is winning. You do that, you'll see recruiting shift. And we'll dive into the visitors list here in hour 2 here after we talk with Coach Barnett. But pretty cool with this input on memorable or influential teams. One more team that always stuck out to me, and I get why they didn't win more, is because they weren't good enough on the lines of scrimmage. But, man, that 88, this was my childhood. Like, this is me selling as much popcorn as I could for midget football so I could go watch Oklahoma State play Nebraska. Barry Sanders, Hartley Dykes, Coach Gundy, that was the quarterback. And they were awesome. They were scoring a ton of points. Barry Sanders ran for damn near 3,000 yards. Would have if they would have counted bowl games. Hartley Dykes was a recreation of Irving Fryer, right? Like just big-time wideout. They were fun, but they lost close games to Oklahoma. A close game to Oklahoma. They got annihilated by Nebraska in the first half, and then it was just a no speed limit type game in the second half. But that team was fun. And it was apparently one of the better teams Oklahoma State could buy because they were off TV the next 2 years because of it. But it wasn't really an influence, but it was just a memorable squad.
If we're talking in conference here, how about that Vince Young Texas team?
Dude, they were something, weren't they? The 05 team?
Yeah, because, I mean, that was, whenever Nebraska was down, there were kids I was going to elementary school with. You saw a lot more Texas hoodies than any other school. Like,
Which is just
sacrilegious.
It was.
But like that's the influence that it had over like my generation was that back in elementary school, kids were in Texas hoodies because of Vince Young because of Texas. Like to go beat that USC squad.
Oh, well,
in the Rose Bowl.
SC was up 2 touchdowns, and then Reggie Bush decided to do a lateral fumble. Game changes, and no, Vince was nuts that game. 400 yards total offense, threw for 250, but ran for 200. But what was nuts about Vince Young, we actually got him on the show the night before the NFL draft.
How'd you pull that one?
I don't know. We just did. It was we had Vince Young on, and we were talking about playing Nebraska because they pretty much killed Nebraska. I think Bo ripped the black shirts away the season before because Nebraska got beat 31-7 or something terrible down in Austin. But back-to-back, both years of Vince was big time. But he could have came to Nebraska because Broderick Thomas was telling Nebraska to recruit this kid named Vince since he was in 8th grade. Nobody listened.
The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Back into it, it's Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager. We welcome in the Hall of Fame coach. It's Gary Barnett. Love our chats with Coach Barnett. Coach, you hunkered down. You getting ready for the U.S. Open. Great weekend ahead.
Yeah, just watching it all day that I can. I'm going to play, and then picking it up as I can. Got it taped, and it's always fun to watch, especially at Pinehurst. I got a chance to go back and play Pinehurst number 2. Oh, it was about right after they had refurbished it, and I'm telling you, it's a heck of a golf course. The greens are everything they're talking about on television is absolutely true, and we were so cheap we didn't take a caddy, so we didn't know where to hit the ball. And I'm telling you, it was a nightmare trying to play that without a caddy because it was really tough.
Buddy of mine has a place out there and really awesome golf family, and I think it'd be just phenomenal, but they are a lot of pros that are as good as it gets, scared with those greens. The term carnage when it's used by pro golfers, never a good thing. So I found last weekend I played a couple of times, and we are, you know what I am as a golfer. But the long and short is I putted okay, but you ever find 6 straight sand traps? I went a stretch, my streak. It broke the old streak of 3, doubled it, 6 straight holes, Coach, of finding the sand, and I'm not any better on the beach.
Yeah, I find a lot of traps, but probably the best part of my game is the sand, so it doesn't bother me too much. Now the fairway bunkers are penal, but around the greens, the sand's better for me in many cases than the grass. But so I've gotten desensitized to sand traps, for the most part.
Gary Barnett's with us. Coach, I want to talk to you about your home state of Missouri, and just what that is to you and some of your college football family when it comes to recruiting. And you have the state of Missouri that not only is Mizzou peaking, I mean, they're doing a great job. They're top 10 preseason. We talk about Missouri a lot around here just because of all the former great Nebraska players that came from the state of Missouri. But what's your impression and perception right now of the state from an open border standpoint? Do you think Missouri's doing a pretty good job of securing it, or is it still open for business for a lot of different programs?
Well, first of all, Missouri's got a lot of players, Chris, that you don't realize. You've got three major metropolitan areas. You've got St. Louis, which not only is St. Louis, Missouri, but it's also East St. Louis. And all those little suburbs on the east side of the river that make up the whole St. Louis area, that is a tremendous area. You have a huge minority population in that area. You have kids from the Midwest. It's really, really a good area, and it's got even better. Kansas City, you got Kansas City, and that includes Kansas City, Kansas. So another big metropolitan area that's got, is it Texas football? No, but there's a lot of players there. There's a lot of kids that play football still in the state of Missouri. It's one of those states that didn't quit playing for junior high kids. They're still playing it. And then people underestimate Springfield, because Springfield is really a really good area, and there's 4 or 5, maybe 6 Division I players, legitimate Division I players coming out of there every year. When I used to recruit Missouri, Missouri would get their share. They never really locked the state down, so you could always go in and get some. But a lot of kids would go to, a number of them would go to Oklahoma, a number of them would go to Illinois. Wisconsin came in and took a lot of players through the years. Iowa, I think it took me 8 years to beat Iowa on a kid out of Missouri. And so there wasn't much allegiance at that time to the University of Missouri. I think Missouri going into the SEC now has really, sort of supercharged the interest of the players in Missouri to go to Missouri. And so I think they've done a really good job of getting kids in the state, especially the best kids in the state. So I think it's probably a much harder place to recruit than when I used to recruit there.
Everyone's going in because of the talent level, and it's kind of close to a lot of different spots. It's not super far away. I mean, and yeah, you're right about the SEC. The thing too, Coach, is Missouri won right away when they moved to the SEC, and they're winning again now with Drinkowitz. And every time I look, I mean, Nebraska's battling for a lot of kids, and I see a lot of these kids that they're looking at in Lincoln, but they're also some of them are staying home. A lot of these big-time wideouts from Missouri are going to Columbia. So now things are really heating up with Missouri prospects, and you nailed it with just the different regions in the state. And it'll be interesting to see if Nebraska. They've been trying to get back in there, but it's been a while. It's been a while.
Well, one of the things that makes it easy to recruit is that you've got an airport in St. Louis, an airport in Kansas City, and an airport in Springfield. So you literally can fly in, and you're within, when you land at that airport, you're within an hour of most of the best players in the state. So it's, from a standpoint of recruiting from out of the area, it's very easy to recruit. So it's, and like I said, it's up to its game. The level of football in Missouri has improved tremendously, and so it's a good place right now.
Gary Barnett's with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Coach, I wanted to talk about the topic of building confidence in a football program, and then not just the build, but then you turn into being confident. It's a topic here with Nebraska, and I'm interested to get your perspective on, that build of belief. And one thing I always remember, and it seemed like every Nebraska-Northwestern game was 3 points or a touchdown. They were always tight in Lincoln, and as the game's winding down, Fitz and company win a lot of tight games in Lincoln. Not every year, but a lot of years. And even going into halftime, covering these games, Fitz had these signs, trust yourself. And every team, every member of the team on the travel squad would touch that sign coming out of the tunnel, going into the tunnel. And interested to focus for a second here on the topic of confidence, how you went about it and how it can be realized.
Well, I think the landscape's changed, Chris. It takes a lot of time to build confidence, and it takes being around your teammates and learning to depend on them, but learning to be dependable for your teammates. And in today's world, or at least in Colorado right now, these kids aren't even here long enough to do that. And so it's a completely different scenario. The way Coach Rule's trying to do it, I think gives him a chance to build confidence. But building confidence, it takes time. And you can't do it in 3 weeks or 3 months, or even it takes you 3 years. It takes you 2 years in many cases. And you don't have those kids around anymore. At least we don't in Colorado. I did an event, and there was 40 CU players at this event. One of them was on our team last year. And a lot of them had just come in. They just met some of the players. And as one of their coaches says, they're in here to make some noise, and then they're out of here. So, it's hard. And I don't know how to put myself in their position, the coaches' positions these days, or at least where we are here, and do that. Because for me, it takes repetition, getting confidence, learning what you're doing, being confident in what you're doing, not just walking in and being cocky about what you do, but actually having confidence in how you've gone about creating habits and techniques and a feel for your teammates and the other guys in your offensive line. So it just doesn't happen overnight. Every once in a while you'll get a guy that's totally confident, but you have to have mastered your craft in order to be confident. And you don't master your craft in a year. And so it's a touchy subject, I think, right now. It's something that I don't know that we'll ever really be able to teach like we could before.
That's really interesting. So how do you adapt to different ways, right? And it comes down to trust. And how do you build that trust factor? And if it's fleeting, right? You're right about the personnel and the turnover part of it, where it's a new guy year to year to year to year versus just having some continuity and being able to drill in some time spent. So that's go ahead.
I think one thing, Chris, is with the portal, you do your research and you get a confident guy. And you can do that because you can't really make them as confident as you could before. So you got to do your research and get somebody that's already. Now that means they've been a starter and they've been a good starter. And so a lot of the guys that are coming into the portal and going into the portal and coming out and going places are guys who are dissatisfied, didn't like the coach, weren't getting enough playing time, weren't playing, wanted to try someplace where they could play. That's not a confident player necessarily. The guy that's come in, we took a kid in this class that is an offensive lineman. He's a grad transfer from El Paso. Mm-hmm. And but he's a grad transfer. Okay, he's 23, 24 years old. He's had time to build confidence. He's an offensive lineman that plays with confidence, and you could just see the difference between him and guys who haven't had time to obtain or grow confidence. So it's like you got to go really do your homework in the portal if you want to have, if confidence is a big factor for you. You have to go recruit it now, I think.
Gary Barnett's with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Try and get it ready-made, or to your point, that grad transfer can help the rest of the guys with his presence. Tight end targets, Coach. Nebraska's going to have and does have a good tight end room, and that's a priority. You had some great tight ends. Do you go into a year with a game plan? How many targets you want to get the tight end? I bring that up. Good story about the NFL. The Final Four teams all have amazing tight ends, and a lot of times they go out of 12 personnel. You got the Kelseys, the Andrews, the Kittles, and the Laportas. I mean, those are your Final Four in the NFL. They all have a stud tight end. Moving forward on offense, did you have a minimum number you wanted to get in the football, or did you just let what the defense did kind of dictate that?
No, we didn't have a minimal number. We just, the game was going to dictate how many catches and targets you were going to get, and the defense. If you go in trying to target one guy and create your game plan around it, first of all, it creates an issue with everybody else.
Sure.
So, for us, I mean everybody on your team, the other guys who aren't getting those targets. So, we never sold the idea of targets. We're going to run our offense, and the quarterback's going to read and take what the defense gives him, and that's the way we're going to be. We never went in saying we were going to. The only thing we would do, we'd go in and say we were going to take 4 shots down the field. And now, we didn't say who those were to, but we always wanted to take 4 shots, 1 a quarter, just to keep them honest. And, sometimes you would be able to do that, and sometimes you wouldn't. It just depends. But you go in saying and thinking that's what you were going to do.
A few more minutes. Gary Barnett with us, Hail Varsity Radio. We'll go a little overtime with Barney here. Get his take coming up on Coach Leach as we're up against a break. Reminder about getting buckled up and use your seatbelt. It saves lives. It prevents injuries only if properly worn. Make it click. A message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. Quite a visit list weekend for Nebraska football. We'll dive into the recruiting weekend coming up. Some pretty good perspective there by Coach on not only recruiting, but also just that confidence factor, and great perspective from him on there. Danny Burke going to be with us here in about 20 minutes. Burke'sBeat.com, the Pride of Chicago, Burke's Best Bets. What's he think of some Major League Baseball? What's he like for the College World Series as far as some wagers? We are on the road tomorrow and next week. Zipline, where we're at, just right across from Charles Schwab on North 14th. We'll be there. We might even break out a pre-show pod. How's that sound with our dear friend Jabba Chamberlain on the road with us? A Triple Play podcast live tomorrow before we get into Hail Varsity. More with Coach Barney next.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager. A couple more minutes, some overtime here with Gary Barnett on Hail Varsity Radio. Coach, going to wind down. Interesting story and discussion this week, not only on social media, but Dennis Dodd, CBS Sports, an interview with Sharon Leach, Coach Leach's widow, and the topic of Coach Leach and the Hall of Fame, the College Football Hall of Fame. He's 0.04 points short of that 600 winning percentage. What's your take on the old Pirate? I know you coached against him a lot. We've chatted about him from time to time. But from a Hall of Fame standpoint, he's right up there from a winning percentage standpoint. Do you think he's Hall of Fame worthy?
He certainly is from being a character for the game and a notable for the game. I'm well aware what that winning percentage has to be, and so I know I fell short of that too. But Mike was around for a long time in a lot of different places. I think that's for somebody else to make that decision, not me. And I don't even need to have an opinion. I can just say Mike Leach was a character. He was a treat to coach against. He was hard to beat. He was fun to be around and at clinics and stuff, or at the deal in Arizona. We had the Fiesta Frolics we'd always go to, or we would be on a Nike trip. He was always fun. He was a fun guy, and I like Mike a lot, and I like Sharon a lot too. So he's a really good guy. The Hall of Fame thing, that's somebody else's bit as far as I'm concerned.
Well, with the Hall of Fame, with your situation, they need to consider, and I get the winning percentage, but do they need to consider if a guy is short on the percentage, don't they need to look at what you took over? I mean, it took you a while to build and you won. And I'm talking Northwestern because you had some tough years before your breakthrough, right? I mean, shouldn't they consider the context of what you're walking into?
I don't. Chris, that's somebody else's deal. I probably don't want to get involved with that.
I get you.
I loved where I coached, and I loved who I coached, and I loved being a coach, and that's a Hall of Fame for me to be able to do that.
Sure. Last thought, we started with golf, we'll end with golf. Do you think Tiger's got one more in him?
No, I don't. But, this will be interesting. I don't know. Scheffler is playing so well.
Oh, yeah.
It's hard not to think about him, but I'll tell you, you can't. Koepka, when he gets to these kinds of tournaments, he just turns it on to some level. And Morikawa, I think, is due. Morikawa's probably good enough short game to be in there. It's hard to pick who it's going to be, but I just don't think Tiger's going to hold up.
Coach, appreciate the time. Always fun to chat.
All right, Chris, great being with you. Thanks.
Good perspective on the Hall of Fame from Coach Gary Barnett. Didn't want to dive in there. I get it from him not wanting to campaign for a spot and wanting to speak or step on toes with it. But my contention is this. If a guy's winning percentage is at 500 or a little bit below, and it's clearly not 80 whatever percent TO is at, it's not waiving the 3-year waiting period that Saban's getting. Urban Meyer is in the bare minimum. It's a 3-year waiting period. If you're under 500 for your first 2 or 3, your first 2 years, I mean, the programs that Barnett took over, that Barry Alvarez took over, Bill Snyder took over, I mean, those guys were true miracle workers. And not only did they win and get championships with Northwestern or Wisconsin or Kansas State, but then they continued to have good seasons. It wasn't just 7 and 5, 6s and 6s. They were, I mean, they had major bowl appearances. They went to Rose Bowls or Citrus Bowls or go down the list. So the context of really a college football outpost or a really, really, really tough job, I think that needs to be considered. It's just like it's kind of like it's similar to the strength of schedule argument.
Well, I just don't think the winning percentage is necessary at all in college football Hall of Fame discussion. Is changing the game of college football not reason enough to be inducted into the college football
How about
Hall
just
of Fame?
being a program changer?
I mean, yeah, but you can look at like college football before Mike Leach is different than college football after Mike Leach came. Mm-hmm. When he showed up at Oklahoma.
Northwestern still plays football because of Gary Barnett.
Exactly. But you look at like Mike Leach. After what he did at Oklahoma, bringing the air raid I don't think you can call it fun and gun, but they're bringing the air raid to college football.
From Kentucky.
Yeah, all of those. I mean, Oklahoma's where it really took off in terms of, I think, people starting to copy. That early 2000s era with Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. Like, whenever everyone in college football starts copying what one person is doing, what Mike Leach was doing with his offenses, and changes the game, is that not reason enough to be inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame? Do you think college football looks the same today if Mike Leach never decided to coach football? If he decided to stick with baseball, or if he decided to be a lawyer, do you think college football looks the same today as it did otherwise?
You don't have Patrick Mahomes.
Exactly.
You don't have Patrick Mahomes. You don't have Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City. You might have Patrick Mahomes, but, I mean, we're talking about the old butterfly effect here.
Legitimately, you probably don't have Joe Burrow doing what he does in 2019 for LSU. A lot of air raid concepts in that offense. I mean, just name any quarterback that put up gaudy numbers since the turn of the century in college football, and they can thank some of their success to Mike Leach.
Well, the system, and that's, you got to be a good signal caller and have a good arm and all that good stuff, and you have to have talent. So I don't want to just pin it on being a system quarterback, but that system was killer.
That's what I'm saying.
It was. And when I asked Barney that, I mean, it was, and I didn't probably phrase it right, but hey, dude, you went to Northwestern. They were going to join the Ivy League after you signed because you were in danger of getting punted from the Big Ten. 3 years later, you're winning and going to a Rose Bowl. That's insane. That is absolutely same with Bill Snyder at K-State.
That's what I'm saying. Does winning percentage really matter? Does it? Do your contributions to college football come down to your wins and losses?
Not always. And there needs to be a consistency look. You weren't just a bottom feeding, oh, dude had 1 year. Yay. No, you turned a program around. And the other part of this, too, is let's talk about maintenance. For guys, if Kellen DeBoer, who's like 108-12 in his career, if he can maintain Bama as a playoff team, and he's walking into a Ferrari. He's a great coach. He'll be fine. Bama will still be good. He's incredible. And he's following a legend. Well, T.O. followed a legend in Devaney, and not only did he maintain, but he exceeded by a national championship. You were talking about consistency. That's what you crave. Be the same team and be damn good every Saturday. Part of that's recruiting and development, right? So let's dive into the visitors list this weekend real quick. We'll get into some gambling thoughts in about 5 minutes or so. So you have Isaiah Monzi, wide receiver out of Lee Summit, Missouri, that is going to be in town. Christian Jones, the big local get. Nebraska going to wine and dine Christian. You have Malcolm Simpson. We've talked a lot, Elijah, about defensive line. Where's Nebraska at on their D-line for 2025? Galveston, Texas's Malcolm Simpson. This guy is really connected with Coach Potroast. And Nebraska in there, projected to get the nod. We'll see. Houston is his hometown school. A&M's in there as well. You also have Aiden Mantui. He's the safety from Hawaii. It's pretty talented, but right now Cal and Washington are right there. Brian
and really fast
Tapu from Utah, also offensive tackle. Nebraska's gunning for.
And on Aiden Manutai, that was the guy, if you remember back to our interview Monday with Tim Verghese, where he was talking about what the Husker coaching staff, despite what the 3 stars says, they have him at the top of their defensive backboard because they love his versatility. They think he can play all the spots in the defensive back room. So you love that. And then we had the 2 guys that were announced today. Or maybe it was yesterday. They're going to be in town this weekend. One of them, the Oregon commit from Lee Summit, Missouri. That's Isaiah Mosey.
I can't read my own writing. I said Monzi. It's Mosey, but Mosey, yeah. Oregon's going to be tough because his dad's pretty tight with Lanning. Mm-hmm. But it's right there. Nebraska's in the race between him and Oregon and Nebraska for Isaiah.
I'm also really intrigued by Nebraska getting another look at another Bishop Gorman offensive lineman. They've been on all of them, but the fact that you have another one coming to campus to
Alo Fatuli.
Yeah, Seyu Alo Fatuli. I think I got that right. Seyu Alo Fatuli.
It says S.J. Alo Fatuli. Yes.
Seyu. I believe is how you pronounce his full first name.
I just had the initials. That's my story. But Nebraska, SC, A&M, Michigan. Nebraska's already hosted him on an official visit, and we'll see.
To get offensive linemen from Bishop Gorman back-to-back weekends, I know they've already had him on the unofficial, but what do you think that says? If you're going back home to Las Vegas and saying, let's go give them another look, I think that says something.
It says a lot. It says that their coach and Coach Donnie, first and foremost, are connected. Donnie's well connected at Bishop Gorman, and there's, back to what Tim told us on Monday as we kind of laid out this recruiting weekend to start the week, that from a style and technique and mentality standpoint, you're just going with a lot of the tools in your tool belt from what you've learned in high school just to the college level, because it's the same thing.
It's the opposite of OJ. The glove do fit.
Right. And Brian Tapu out of Utah, the other offensive tackle they're looking at, Nebraska fighting Iowa State, Utah, and BYU for him. This kid's coached by Tony Finotti, Salt Lake. So another Nebraska connection. Give me the Hawaiian safety again real quick.
You're talking Aiden Manutawi?
Manutawi, yeah.
Manutawi, okay.
But he's...
We're just butchering pronunciation
we
in
are.
segment.
We're going to have, the next 3 years, 60 Pauley kids come to Lincoln, and you and I are going to have to go... we're going to have to go to
nicknames.
We're going to have to go to school. We're going to have to go to school. Gambling. What's your weekend look like?
Danny Burke takes us to school.
He does. He will tell us what's what as Burke's Beat, Burke's Best Bets on the way. Thanks for spending time at Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager. Road trip tomorrow and much of next week in Omaha for the College World Series down at Zipline Tap Room, just around the corner from the College World Series from Charles Schwab. We want to see you out. Come on by, say hi. We'll be up top and excited to have Elijah on the road with me. We'll also snag a two-time World Series champ and the only man to win at the College World Series for your beloved Nebraska baseball team. Jabba Chamberlain going to be with us. We'll be on site a little bit after 2 for a live podcast recording as well with the Triple Play podcast. Some preview of the CWS field. So excited to have Jabba with us for that. So we're on the road tomorrow, 4 to 6. You know what? We might even have a Garth Glissman sighting. G-Unit could come by. And, I don't know, throw a beer to us or something.
Tell us how much better the SEC is at baseball.
Well, it is the SEC ACC Invitational.
The problem is he's not wrong.
That's all good. So excited to have Jabba with us tomorrow on the road at Zipline. Come on by 4 to 6. North 14th is where we're located. He is in Chicago. Pride of Chicago, Daddy Burke at Daddy Burke 5 on Twitter's where you follow him. Check out his great work, his insight on gaming with burksbeat.com, his blog, his podcast, and Pride of Chicago, good to have you in. It is summer, it is baseball, it is the College World Series, it's the NBA Finals, it's the Stanley Cup Finals, and oh yeah, daily baseball thoughts. Where's your head at, man? What are you focusing in on?
Yeah, we've got plenty of baseball, like you said, has been the main focus this week. Now that the NBA Finals have really given us nothing to be excited about. They almost had a historic comeback last night against Boston, but in the back of everybody's mind, you knew it was just going to be a tease. And, you know, Luka's getting shamed by Brian Windhorst, which has happened to be the most entertaining thing about this series now. And they'll probably get swept. So, yeah, it's just been all baseball, man, and hoping my Cubbies can turn it around because they are a team that I am backing tonight, you know, with hopefully a miracle behind them because it seems like that's what they need every time they get a win. That's one of the bets that I am making tonight against the Rays, fellas.
Yeah, Denny, I've been sort of following your MLB handicapping handbook, not daily, but pretty close to it over the past couple of weeks here. What else you got on the docket tonight? Because So I look through it. You got plenty of plays for a Thursday night in MLB action.
Yeah, so like I mentioned, got the Cubs there at about minus 108 on the money line. Basically, it's a trust of Justin Steele, the ace for the Cubs. The southpaw was tremendous last year and now is really getting into form as of this moment for the Cubbies against a Rays team that offensively has actually been struggling even more so than the Cubs have. And they've got a young right-hander, Taj Bradley, taking the bump, and he's got a lot of potential, but right now his expected ERA is 5.42. He's allowing about over 2.3 home runs per 9 innings and does not have a high ground ball rate, and barrel rate-wise, 17%, which is extremely high. So if there's a team that the Cubs can actually make contact against, this would be the one to do so. So I like the Cubs at a shorter money line price. Also taking a spot here with the Twins on the run line, minus 114. So Joe Ryan taking the bump for Minnesota. Ryan has been phenomenal this season. He's got a 3.08 xERA. His xFIP is 3.22, and his expected ISO, which is hit, doubles, triples, anything more, that's just at 174, and he's really limiting the walks. The A's got a new pitcher they're throwing out there, and Minnesota's offense, top 6 in ISO against righties, and weighted runs created plus over the last 2 weeks. So I think the momentum stays in the land of 10,000 lakes. So we got the Twins minus a run in the hook. Same play here, but with the Diamondbacks running a hook. A little bit of plus money, guys, plus 116, taking the D-backs over the Angels. Brandon Pfaadt, who last year in his rookie season tremendously struggling on the bump pretty much every time he took it until the postseason. And over the last few starts, the 3 to be exact, he's given up 13 earned runs, and his ERA is 4.60. But, guys, you look at some of those underlying metrics, 3.06 is where his expected ERA is at, and his barrel rate is as low as 5.6%. Over the last 2 weeks, the Angels, they got a 71 weighted runs created plus and just a 101 on their ISO. That is very, very bottom tier. So I think they can take advantage, meaning Pfaadt can against this weaker lineup for the Angels. And then you flip things around, Griffin Canning, he's going to be starting for Los Angeles. He has been a very poor pitcher this season, 4.85 expected ERA and a 4.97 xFIP. You see this Diamondbacks team has really been brutal against righties. They've been picking it up over the last 2 weeks as well. So this would be a good spot for them to claim the rubber match, and I think they can do so by 2 runs or more, and I like that you're getting a little plus money on that side.
Daddy, how you feeling about the ice tonight? Panthers, Oilers, Florida leads 2-0. Edmonton minus 140.
Yeah, it looks like the market's moving in favor of the Oilers, and I mean, it makes sense, right? You drop 2 on the road, and now the assumption is you're going to bounce back with the offensive firepower that they have. I can't justify getting on Edmonton, at least in the sense of how expensive this price is now, right? I mean, I don't want to lay minus 140 against one of the best goalies throughout the entirety of this postseason. I mean, Sergei Bobrovsky has been a revelation for this team. I think the way I would prefer to go about it would be considering the under if you really want to get involved in a side or a total. But then with the thought process of Bobrovsky being good, the assumption that the Oilers are going to be very aggressive offensively, especially after Game 2, I would look at Sergei's saves over 24, 25 and a half. I know it's around that range. I would look at that prop for tonight. And again, I'm pretty torn on the side, but based on just the pure price, it would be hard for me to get on Edmonton at that expensive of a number.
Danny, before we quickly get to College World Series, anything Game 4 between the Celtics and the Mavs you're looking at a couple days from now?
I just really don't see how Dallas ends up getting this job done. I mean, it's such a two-man game right now, and Luka just looks completely worn out on both sides of the ball. And Kyrie, as good as he was, it's hard for him at his size to carry the weight against one of the better defenses. So I would definitely look toward the side of Boston to close this thing out with the assumption Jaylen Brown's claiming that NBA Finals MVP.
Danny Burke with us, burksbeat.com. It's his podcast, his website. Burke's Best Bets, our Thursday segment here, always at 5:40. So we get to the College World Series. Have you zoomed in on a favorite? Do you have an underdog? Anything for the folks headed to Ameristar before they go to the first or second session game tomorrow?
You guys are going to kill me. I'll be completely honest. I've been so intertwined with baseball and basketball and everything else. I have really not paid too much attention whatsoever to the College World Series and leading up into it. So I need some inspiration from you guys and some advice. I need you to tell me what I should be looking for here.
Well, Danny, maybe you don't have to look into anything. You could just pick up a rooting interest put a little fiver down occasionally. Do you at least know the teams that are in the College World Series field this year?
I don't, besides some of the obvious contenders, right? I assume you got like the LSU, some of the Texas schools in there. Who's always in there?
No LSU.
No LSU?
No LSU, but you have A&M, of course.
Okay. NC State, Florida State, Florida. Okay, now we're into my memory bank.
Carolina.
North Carolina.
Kentucky,
Florida's been
Tennessee.
pretty good this year, haven't they?
No, they beat Nebraska. They were a game over 500, limped in as a 3 seed, but they've got the Player of the Year, possibly.
Okay.
A&M's the last one we forgot.
I said A&M to start.
Well, then we're missing one.
We are. Daddy.
Virginia.
Virginia, that's right. Daddy, we'll check in next week. Thanks for the thoughts on MLB and some hockey, brother. Enjoy your night.
Always, guys. Take care. Appreciate you.
There he is, Daddy Burke, burksbeat.com. We'll get to some more stream thoughts on recruiting and the Pirate.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for spending the day here on Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Podcast, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. Get the show when you want it, the interviews or the full show. Great stuff from Gary Barnett, Daddy Burke. Brandon Vogel today. On the road tomorrow, Jabba Chamberlain joins us. We're live at Zipline 4 to 6 as it's a road show Friday for the College World Series. The other Brian asks, from a recruiting standpoint, who's the biggest challenge right now for Nebraska, for Christian Jones? Is it Auburn? I think Nebraska's still in a good spot. I think with Brett Venables in Oklahoma, though, I think that is a concern because of what Venables does and has done. Clemson and Oklahoma with the linebacker spot. It's
that's your 3 right there: Auburn, Oklahoma, Nebraska.
Right. I would put Oklahoma over Auburn just because. Clearly, Christian's looking at the SEC, which good for him. But I think Nebraska will put its best foot forward, and I think they'll make another impression. They've been doing their work, and he is a big-time priority. Steven checks in on Coach Leach. Good to have you saying hi, Steven, in the stream. You have to look at Coach Leach, his accomplishments and wins. That also as an offensive coordinator and the air raid and how he innovated the college passing game. Yeah, his offense, he wasn't there for that Oklahoma championship in 2000, but he got him Heupel. That was his recruit. And then passed the torch to Mangino. And Scott, a couple of good questions in the recruiting world. Elijah here. Do you measure recruiting by talent or by wins? Also, if Nebraska takes a jump in year 2 under Rule, that is expected when he was hired. Do you think Nebraska takes that jump? And I think Scott nails it here when it comes to your measurement of talent, how many guys are going to the league, and that could take some time. And I think you've got guys that are pro material here. When Rule walked in, I think you can get some guys coached up to be at that level. So
I like his take, though, because I've said this probably for about 2 years now, that it's – in terms of overall health of a college football program, I think how many players you're sending to the league, especially in the first couple rounds, might be a better indicator of overall program health than anything else. Because, we've seen fluky things happen in college football. We've seen teams that aren't fully fleshed out for a year, and then they're back on top 1 or 2 years later after that. I think in terms of year to year, how many guys you're sending to the league might be the best indicator for overall success to the overall health of your program. Because it indicates not only the fact that you're able to bring in talent, it also brings into question that development side of things.
In a rugged league, expanded league like the Big Ten, are you a conference title game contender? That means you're top 2. It'll soon be your top 4 because you'll have a semi setup, AFC, NFC. Don't kid yourself. But are you a playoff contender? Are you winning 8-9 games against a loaded schedule? And are you deep enough when guys go down in the Big Ten to plug and play? And then all of that being said, you're sending starters and former backups that become starters to the league. So that's my measurement. We'll see where it goes. We'll say hello tomorrow from Zipline in Omaha, just right across from Charles Schwab, Hail Varsity. Thanks for tuning in. Powered by Cornhead Lager.